So for some of the people I interviewed in Squeeze when they were going through economic hardship, they'd get sick physically, they'd be psychologically troubled, they'd have to go on anti-anxiety medication, and sometimes they wouldn't even have health care, so that would be an added expense. Some of the subjects might experience something called decision fatigue, where they'd be unable to make decisions or choices in their lives, basic choices, because they've been so overwhelmed by the feeling of economic uncertainty. They were thinking constantly, how do I survive, rather than how do I lead a better life, or how do I get my kid on the best course. And so that's a commonplace of sort of just that overwhelmed aspect when you don't have resources. That's all you're thinking about. One of the challenges for people seeking employment in the gig economy is that they're disposable, right? They can always be replaced by somebody else. They may not have relationships with another human being at Uber or at Lyft, whatever. Supposedly it's this idea of independence, but it's often like, in fact, this kind of free-floating quality where they're not connected to, clearly connected to a boss or colleagues. And I think that can be really dangerous, because then these people's experience is not humanized to the people who are hiring them. They're just cogs and wheels. And we should really start thinking about that, because I think it can be really debilitating. I talk about teachers who drive Uber in a chapter, and I think for many of them, they were recruited by the company. They had a motto 4 or 5 years ago: Uber, teachers driving our future. So teachers and nurses were attractive to Uber simply as middle-class icons, but they weren't attractive enough to, the people in their community they were teaching, or the politicians in their community, to give them a wage so they wouldn't have to drive Uber on the side. So to me, that's one of the dangers of the gig economy too, that the formerly middle class can be used just as a symbol, and a kind of respectability that they can be offering these companies, while they're kind of riffling through these once stable professions for solid people that they can exploit. Many of the people I wrote about are not in organizations or even in corporations. They're contingent, which means that they work part-time on contracts, they work gigs, this is now a huge amount of the population, or they work too few hours to be counted as employees, right? So, I'm not sure it becomes an organizational thing most of the time, but in terms of what we're doing at Economic Hardship Reporting Project, we're trying to pay journalists who've fallen on hard times $1 a word plus expenses. And that's just like one small way to keep them afloat. We have people writing for us who were living without heat, on food stamps, on government medical care. They were really struggling. And this is one thing that I've noticed has been interesting lately. I call them sort of white-collar alt-labor. So it's like white-collar unions almost for journalists, for other employees that in the past were not necessarily unionized freelance journalists. And what we're doing is part of that, but there's all sorts of other things cropping up. There are collectives for caregivers that I've written about. So they're sort of working together. They're owning the apps where they rent out, where they try to get customers and for house cleaning or nannying. And so I think, what can organizations do? Organizations can try to empower their poorer workers by giving them resources, both economic and from the companies themselves. For instance, like an app that they themselves would own a part of, rather than just simply the company owning the app and the worker just this teeny piece of the, teeny TaskRabbit. They would instead own that, be a part of the app. Cooperatives is another way I think we can start thinking about that, especially web-based cooperatives. That's becoming really important, given the concentration of wealth, where you have a teeny number of people owning these companies and just hundreds of thousands of people working for them, driving Uber, cleaning houses, et cetera. We could start talking about people owning a share of the digital economy and the gig work that they're doing.